First, we have to get to our top story, which deals with the world of non-compete agreements and one company that's taking compliance to an extreme. We have our senior editor, Clarissa Haas, that's going to join us now to talk about it. Clarissa, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Thanks again for having me back.
We've got kind of an interesting story.
You win.
So to say, we've got kind of an interesting story that is still continuing to go on with Total Quality Logistics, the second largest brokerage in the country. And I think everybody knows by now they are sticklers for this non-compete agreement. Let's talk about how this court case is shaking out now.
Sure. And this court case has been going on for about 17 months. And the way TQL has written their non-competes, it's so overbroad that they don't tell you what industries you can or can't work at. It's up for you to kind of, decipher what you think will get you, off the hook as far as them chasing you down for litigation. But in this case, Jacob Patterson, he worked as a broker at TQL, and he decided, hey, I'll go work for as director of operations for like a small trucking company. I won't be doing anything in the brokering world at all. And I'm going to help them grow their business. And then a month after he leaves, and joins this company, he's hit with a non-compete lawsuit. And then, so he's been fighting that for, over a year. And then TQL decided that they wanted to add the company that he was working for as well, PBJ Express, like a small Missouri company. And then the judge said, no, it'll take too much time, to amend your complaint to add this trucking company. And so they went ahead and filed their own separate suit now against PBJ Express, even though Jacob Patterson, once he even got wind that TQL planned to do this, he resigned and said, I don't want to bring you into this ongoing legal battle. And yeah, now they're in it too, fighting a separate case.
Clarissa, this almost sounds in a way petty to go after one person that's working in a different role, still within the supply chain, but not really as a competitor. Does this kind of get to him kind of ending his role on bad terms, and now they're just trying to make sure that they're following up with him, making sure that he's not going to be able to work in the industry, or is just something that they're doing and kind of showing their weight, as Kaylee mentioned earlier, the second largest brokerage in the U.S.?
Well, I think in Jacob Patterson's case, it's kind of personal now. Like, with if a judge said no, like we're going to keep this one, your new employer out of it, then we're going to, make it miserable for anybody kind of involved in your career. And for Jacob, he tried, with 5 like pre-teenagers at the time, and the amount of hours that TQL demanded of his time, he kind of felt like he was sliding his family, and he was trying to strike what everybody tries to, that work-life balance. And, so he went to TQL and said, hey, I need to step back, maybe put me in a different role, less demanding role. I'll take less pay just so that I can have more time with my family. And so he tried to do that for a few months, and it got more, he said in his, that it got more demanding than his previous job. And so then he said, hey, I'm thinking about leaving. I want to make sure that, I don't violate any terms of my non-compete. And they kind of were discussing it, and then like he's, abruptly they decided not to, have enter any more discussions about like what he could do and where he could work. And so, yeah, he just took a leap, for his family, and then now it's this, all of this, and he's not alone in these types of cases.
So, Clarissa, the idea of non-competes, I think, are starting to become antiquated in our industry. Our neighbors here in Chattanooga, Steam Logistics, of course, spearhead that coalition of the groups and the companies fighting against non-competes for this exact reason, right? Like a non-compete was initially put in place to prevent brokers jumping from place to place to place and stealing each other's business. But at the end of the day, it feels now like you can protect yourself without necessarily harming these employees, right? How quickly do we see kind of the status quo of the industry change where people aren't having to suffer underneath these non-compete agreements? You don't have employees who are still working at TQL saying, you know what, we're afraid to leave because our earning potential is completely compromised if we do.
Right. Well, and Steam Logistics and that coalition is doing amazing work, and with all the companies that have signed on to it. The problem is that it's too late for these TQL people that are already stuck, in this situation. They are heavily recruit at colleges and everything. So they get, these young college fresh out of college students and, promise them all this, earning potential and everything. But like if you, on your first day of work, the non-compete really isn't mentioned. And so you go your first day of orientation and it's like on a tablet where you just initial here. And if you say, hey, I want to take this home and review it, they'll say, well, if you don't sign right now, we'll just rescind your job offer. There's hundreds of applicants, that we've interviewed that want your position. And so then it's like, well, I'm already failing on my first day of work. I'm already, if I don't do this, everybody else is signing them. And so then they're stuck. And I hear all the time, from just in previous stories that I've written that, that they're stuck in a job that like they're held hostage, in a job that they don't want to work at anymore, but are afraid to leave and, to be financially ruined, trying to fight a legal challenge against TQL.
Clarissa, I think that's a great point. Really, when there's going after these, college students that really don't know what they don't know, and this is their first role within an industry, essentially they're almost making sure that they can't work within this industry without working for them, and really cutting off a potential, workforce for any of their potential competitors. Do we see anyone else taking these steps or taking it to this extreme when we're looking at the supply chain, or is TQL kind of just leading the charge with really ramping up this non-compete?
Well, that's interesting. And, I was thinking that, after writing these stories that I would hear my company is doing these amazing things to prevent, like why keep employees at a job that they don't want to work at? I mean, as far as, production and morale and all these things that, you lose. But then I'm hearing that other specialized services within the supply chain are kind of taking the TQL approach recently and aggressively going after, their employees as well. And so, I just, found out about this company after my story ran yesterday, where like 3 or 4 people, are saying, hey, and, I don't want to name the company at this point just because I haven't done a lot of research, but it's like, they're like, hey, they're following the TQL model, and, like to try to keep their people and, from leaving and joining another competing company. And they're resorting to litigation.
It's interesting and so nuanced in a conversation I think that definitely needs to happen to change in the industry. Clarissa, thank you for joining us this morning. Will you be here for F3 next week with us?
Of course, I will be there. So I'm packing my bags, going to be there Monday morning, bright and early.
Awesome. We're excited to see you. Safe travels, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, thanks again.
That was Clarissa Hawes, our senior editor, and as she mentioned, she'll be at F3 next week, as should you. But right now, we're going to head over to the wall because we have our first carrier update of the morning.